And joining us now here on the Black and Gold Banneret, he is a UCF Hall of Famer. Of course, part of the Tampa Bay Rays coaching staff, hitting coach of the American League champion Tampa Bay Rays. I speak of Chad Mottola, who joins us here on Black and Gold Banneret. How you doing?
Great to be here. Hopefully, we'll be in spring training soon. But it's one of these things. It's always great to represent UCF and come back home and still live in Orlando. So it's an honor to be here.
What has it been like? Have you had a chance to reflect on what you and the Rays obviously did getting to the World Series? I know it was such a unique season, and they brought it, but yet to be in the World Series, and we were covering it from a UCF angle throughout the run because you obviously made it as a coach there, joining there. Drew Buter is the only UCF alums to be a part of the World Series. Have you had a chance to reflect on the run?
I mean, mentally fatiguing for sure. It wasn't just the baseball side. It was the unique experiences of staying in the hotels, being away from everybody, being away from family the last month and a half, not being able to see them, eating out of a box, literally every meal, throwing away all the paper plates. So it was a struggle to make it through. It was a compliment to all the guys that they were going through the protocols, and actually just life outside of baseball was so tough. So it was one of those things that you reflect back and just realize, like, wow, we did the World Series, but not only did we make it to the World Series, we made it through the season, which there was plenty of times where we didn't think that was going to happen.
Just, I guess, surreal would be the word I would use to, like, you're in, like, let's say game 4 of that World Series is absolutely crazy. And you had to be sitting in that dugout thinking, like, I can't imagine what this stadium would be like if we were like in Tampa right now, which you would have been if you guys were, the visiting team, the lower seed, what the stadium would have been like for that kind of game. Was it surreal to sort of go through a World Series with, limited fans and in a neutral setting?
I mean, we became so accustomed to it. It was so nice to have fans in the stands, period. That was the first series that we had any fans at all. I think they said it was 12,500. It sure seemed like a lot more than that. I don't know if they stretched it a little bit or followed everything perfectly, but that was plenty. I mean, for what we went through, we experienced the year before at the Trop in the games against the Astros. And it was amazing because, unfortunately, sometimes at the Trop, we're the home team, but the Yankees and Red Sox draw better. So it was the first time during the playoffs that we literally had 95% fans cheering for us. And it was something special. So it really would have been crazy for that to happen at home, but I don't think I could have felt any different. Like, the amazing play that happened, even if there was nobody there or 100,000 people cheering us on, the craziness that ensued in that game, and the Mikey Brosseau homer against Chapman, just the way that all came together. There was two experiences in life that completely different. I can't tell you which one was more special, but they just got there in different ways. I've been in pro baseball 29 years, and nothing has approached those two moments, to have them both in the same season. And then guys want to say, well, I wonder if this is a little different, a little tainted title for the Dodgers. No way. I mean, it was just, everything that happened was so special and didn't take anything away from the season that we put together.
What was it like, going through the postseason? You hosted Toronto in the opening round, but then you had to go to California. I mean, this is a postseason that's going to be documented. It's going to be written, documentaries and books are going to be written about. When you look back 10, 20 years ago, what was it like to be in California in such a unique setting? You played the Yankees, then the Astros, classic series, both of them going to distance, then the World Series in Texas. Like, this is neutral field. It's not I know you've always thought about the World Series, but you figured it would be either at home or on the road, not in like a unique neutral settings. What was it like?
I mean, it was crazy because not only did we stay away from the places, but we would be quarantined. So each hotel, the one in San Diego is 45 minutes away from the field. The one in Texas was 45 minutes away from the field. So it was one of those things that your whole day literally was either on the bus, going to and from the field. And it was, you never had that feeling of, okay, we're ahead of this, we get to catch our breath. It was definitely eating on the run. Always, the hotels did an amazing job of taking care of families, having all kinds of activities for the kids. So they made it as good as possible. But like I said, there was so much more going on other than baseball. Those guys had to literally just separate themselves from, and I know it was tough on me, especially for a month and a half being away from my family. The sacrifices the guys made, the hotel, the sacrifices they made, it was so impressive, just the way everything came together, all the employees respecting our space and kind of going through the protocols and staying away from their families as well. A lot of stuff that people didn't realize behind the scenes just to put it together. So I think that's why, I mean, I don't know if we've recovered yet. We're 2 months, 3 months into the off season. It's one of these things that I've caught my breath, but I don't know if I'm ready to get back. And I'm hoping this vaccine really takes care of things and brings back some normalcy for the fatiguing mental side, let alone the competition. You can tell from some of the superstars in the game that it was a struggle for them.
You've been now the Rays hitting coach for a few years, and were with Toronto before that. Has coaching always been sort of a passion for you, something you knew you wanted to do at the major league level?
I couldn't say it was the furthest thing from now. I mean, all through my career, I don't want to say it was a struggle. I played for 16 years. It was a grind for sure, up and down the big leagues. And the one thing I said when I finished playing, I'm going to get away from this game. Like, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm looking forward to stepping away. Then reality set in the first off season, and I said, okay, now what am I going to do? And I was fortunate enough to one of the guys in the Blue Jays organization came to me that offseason and said, are you done playing? I said, for sure. My body can't do it anymore. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a month, but I'm going to offer you a coaching position. And I kind of said, no chance. There's no way I'm going to get back in this game. And he said, I'll tell you what, think about it for a month. And it's going to be kind of a no title. I just want to keep you around some of the older guys or younger guys that are in the big leagues, older as far as minor league guys. And I basically took that approach and thought about it for a month. And I said, well, I know this game. Let me try it out. And I ended up falling in love with it. Just my struggles, I was able to relate to them, kind of being a 5th pick overall. So being the super prospect to kind of the 6-year free agent bouncing around for 9 years. So I think I had a good, I could relate to all the different guys on the roster. And I know how hard this game is, and I'll never forget it. So I think that's part that I don't want to say I enjoy their struggles, but I can empathize with them pretty good and relate to them and understand that, no one's trying to fail. Like we're all trying to get this. So I don't take it personal like some of my coaches did. Like I was letting them down.
How did you develop your philosophy then as you got into coaching? Did you have your own philosophies going into it? Did you kind of pick some brains of some people that influenced you? Just tell me through kind of how that philosophy developed here. As you've got a lot of recognition now recently. Travis d'Arnaud during the playoffs told the National that you're a big reason why he's had the success that he's had, for example, and other players have talked about that.
I think the unfortunate part of being a journeyman and being in 9 organizations, you kind of hear all different opinions and different ways to do things. And believe it or not, I saw some of how not to treat people. I learned the most from some of the people that were the worst organizations. Unfortunately, I'm not going to name names or call out organizations, but it's one of those things that I didn't realize my last 3 years, being 33, 34, 35 in AAA and kind of being through it all. I kind of mentored some of those young guys. So I guess I was kind of grooming myself to be a coach without even realizing. So I didn't know I had a philosophy. Luckily, my first year I was in the GCL, which is short season, kind of bounced around a little bit, but I made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes, to be honest with you, throughout the day, but I acknowledge it. But I made a ton back then, but these kids were all out of high school or Latin America or some older college guys, and they're so eager, they don't even realize that you said something different. So over time, I've had different ways of looking at the way I approach people, but it's just one of those things. I'm just myself and I want other people to be themselves. It's no secret sauce or something I have other than I expose myself and want you to kind of get a little bit naked with me too, to let's fix these things. I'm on your side.
Is there something as a hitting coach that you want to see more in the game offensively? Something that this game is missing offensively that you want to see more of, and maybe you try to preach to your guys?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to see more contact. Obviously, beating the shift a little more often. These are great in theory, but I also have to understand they're all throwing 100 miles per hour at the neck, and there's certain things that no one had to deal with before. So we're trying to do things to combat this. Everybody's I treat everybody in their own right They all have their own way of beating the pitcher, but I'd love to tell you that I have this secret thing, this 2-strike approach that's I'm keeping under my hat, or using the whole field a little more often. I acknowledge these are things that we get better at, but it's not like it's that easy if I just come up with a philosophy that guys are going to start striking out less. I mean, we're all trying not to swing at a slider in the dirt. We're all trying to lay off that 4-seamer up. The easy thing for the commentators and the public is to say, well, why don't you just choke up and use the whole field? That's our goal, believe me, but it's just not that easy.
The thing that impresses me about obviously what you're doing, and Brian knows this. He's a diehard baseball, so he knows the ins and outs of the game. And for example, with your organization, there's a lot of constant turnover where guys get called up, guys get sent down, guys move on to other teams. You bring in new guys through free agency. That's life in Major League Baseball, and yet you got to you use everybody. You obviously analytics has been well talked about, but you go matchups. Just how do you have more information, more data, but you have more guys that are roles. I mean, Brett Phillips is a great example. We talked about that in Game 4. People are like, "Oh my goodness, But obviously, you guys he came in, he was prepared. So take me through that approach, because you literally every guy in your roster has to be ready, because their number literally could get called at any moment based on what the data says, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy job for cashier myself when a guy gets 3 hits and a couple home runs and then he's not in the lineup the next day. So you want the guys to be mad. You want them to understand that we're putting them in positions to succeed. You never want them to accept their role players. So it's one of those things is like, we want you to want to play and think we're not doing you justice and things like that. But our track record really helps. We're winning, which helps them understand. Our expression is, usually say you're starting today, and they always just say, no, I'm not starting, but I'm playing. They all know at some point they're going to enter the game. They all know that they're going to pick each other up. The buy-in is great. The turnover for me sometimes year to year personally hurts when I develop a relationship with a guy. We get to the point where, okay, can't wait till next year where we get to pick up where we left off. And then all of a sudden they're gone. And then we turn over but our front office does an amazing job of finding these guys and putting them in roles to succeed. That I don't want to say I'm numb to it, because I love each guy that enters the door, but everybody's kind of accepted that's what's going to happen. So we treat everybody amazing when they're in the room, and when they kind of graduate and move on, it's like, go get all your money and we'll always be in touch, and anything you need, we'll be here. So there's an understanding, losing Charlie Morton, losing Blake Snell this offseason, there's no doubt that's crushing. But we also know we've done it every year, and somehow we find a way. And the Brett Phillips is a great example. Rousseau is a great example. I mean, even Avi Garcia last year, who kind of came off a bad hip and then resurrected his career. It's when people come in the door here, it's like, okay, we know we have your interest at heart, and we're going to do everything to get you in the best positions as possible. Now, is it easy? No, by no means is it easy. And I tell guys, I want you to be mad when you're not playing. It's okay. Go ahead and yell at me, take it out on me. But when your number's called, you better be prepared, because you're only going to suffer if you sit here and pout.
Even I think the poster boy for that would even be Randy Rosarena, who had the most ridiculous postseason ever, really. I mean, just a quick synopsis of that. Like, what was it like to watch that as his coach, but also just as a fan?
I would say it was more of a fan, believe it or not. It was one of those things. He had COVID. We missed him in spring training. It was like 6 weeks away from the world. Speaks a little bit of English because from Cuba. So there's so many obstacles he overcame. Enters, and all of a sudden it's just unconscious. Guys, another thing where you just sit back and pinch yourself. Like, did he just hit another home run on the guy that we're not even touching? And he's hit him using all fields, hitting fastballs, breaking balls. It didn't matter. I don't know if I've seen a stretch like that at any level at any part of the year, let alone during the postseason in the last month. He's really set himself up for a lot of expectations going to the next season, for sure.
Well, you've played 16 years in pro ball. For those who don't know, and most of them in the minor leagues, for those who don't know, can you describe what it's like, the rigors of playing minor league baseball for that many years?
I mean, I can't sit here and say and complain and with all my friends that are still out in the real world, and I just haven't had a real world job. But it's more for my wife that had to travel and see all the different cracks of the world, and the kids, they're the ones that have it tough. Sure, you get used to a cold shower, you get used to eating takeout, you get used to it. But I got to play the game that I loved, and I still haven't had a real world job, as they like to say, and all my buddies let me know all the time. So there's plenty of guys that I played with that, you know, along some point in their career, they're like, why are you still doing this grind in the minor leagues? And I just really genuinely didn't know any better, and I loved it. So they didn't really have to rip the uniform off. It was just time. It was too hard for me to prepare my body more than anything. It just wasn't fun anymore. So it was easy to step away. But now moving into coaching, I still get to compete and live through their competitions and prepare them the way I feel like the ideal way to prepare is. So it was an easy transition, but the 16 years in the minor leagues, really, you learn to take cold showers, you learn to eat cold food, leftovers, and you just live at the ballpark.
How is Coach Mottola different than Chad Mottola, the player? Like, if I put the two of you in the same room, how would you guys get along? Would be on the same page? Would there be some clashes there? How are you changed from your playing days to now as a coach?
I would say I'm a lot more tolerant. I'm a lot more understanding. I kind of take other people's opinion a lot better now. I think I was a little thick-headed, probably tough to be around at times, but I also appreciate the guy that acts that way. I don't want guys that listen to me and do everything I say. I want guys with a little bit of edge. I want guys that disagree with me. I want guys that have their own opinion, that have their own personality. I think I appreciate them a lot more, maybe because that's the way I was. So there's definitely kind of a graduation into a mature grown up that I don't know if it was there as a player, but I believe in competition, you have to have that edge. So it's just as we all age, we kind of understand a little bit more, but the best competitors I've been around have been the meanest people to be around, and I'm okay with that. So I don't have that edge anymore, but I still want to encourage other people to have that edge.
Well, let's go back to the young Chad Mottola being drafted 5th overall in 1992 by the Cincinnati Reds. What memories stick out to you from that day now, 30 years, almost 30 years on?
How naive I was. It's definitely a business. Back then, you know, everybody gives me a hard time. Jeter went 6, obviously, Hall of Fame, changed the game in New York. I just feel like that was destiny. We both ended up where we were supposed to end up. There's no hard feelings at all. It's kind of an honor now. After about 25 years, it turned into an honor. For about the first 25, it was miserable hearing that every year. Hey, do you know that you were taken before? Yeah, I'm fully aware. But I think just how innocent I was, how naive I was. Like this is a business. People lives depend on it, and there's a lot more going into it than just a game. That day I thought I was going to play a game, but soon realized I was getting into a business with a lot of money and people's lives at stake, which is the real world. But I don't think I realized that at the time.
Has that helped you in that throughout your journey, being a high draft pick, going through the minors, like relate to the players? Because you've dealt with every single player you can imagine, players that maybe are top prospects, have high expectations, to the guy that's still maybe lacking that confidence, that's trying to find their game. Because baseball's such a hard sport. It's a game of failure. And people and so much of it is mental. You could lose your confidence so easily. Through going through what you went through, has that helped you as far as a coach here? Because you probably relate to almost every player on the roster imaginable.
Absolutely. It was miserable to go through all those years of failure, but it's definitely helped me as a coach. The way to approach people, the way to understand the different times, the highs and the lows. I mean, there's nothing harder in my eyes of coaching than being a hitting coach because all the failure. I mean, there's failure right around the corner every night, basically. And I've accepted that. I live the life of that. And I don't mind being the whooping boy at times, because I would rather you be mad at me than mad at yourself. There's plenty of nights that I stayed up trying to figure this game out. I realize now that you're never going to figure this game out. The more you just roll with it and learn to cope with the failures and accept them, the better off you are. Don't try to run from them. So it's definitely being around all the 9 organizations, seeing all the philosophies, seeing all the different players that got there different ways. I've played with a lot of good players, both in AAA and the big leagues, and just observing. And it was miserable to bounce around organization, but it helped me understand the way people work and the way this game is. There's no absolute one way to do it.
But it still must also been an honor because you played in the internationally for so long and you played well. You were inducted in their Hall of Fame last year. That has to be still quite an honor.
Yeah, it's turned into an honor. Like I said, all these years they would rib me and give me a hard time of, it's just Jeter goes to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown and I go to the Hall of Fame in an International League in the same season. It's one of these things that, yes, for sure. You look back now and, man, I played for, I think, 12 years in AAA, which that's unheard of nowadays, just to be able to survive and be that close and just still work. And, I got my cup of coffee those different years just to, number one, financially survive, but number two, just keep that carrot alive. But I hit a grand slam my second game in AAA and had a 2-run single. It was like 2 for 4 with 6 RBIs. And I was like, man, I'm in the big leagues next week. There's no doubt. So 12 years later, I was still in AAA after a couple cups of coffee, but I wouldn't trade it at all. Like I said, it was meant to be, and it's given me a great disposition where I'm at now for sure.
We're speaking with Chad Mottola here on the Black and Gold Banneret. Tell us about how you ended up at UCF. You played from 90 to 92, obviously got drafted. That's how it set you up. But how did you end up at UCF? Because that's a unique story in itself. Because I believe, as I understand it, you picked UCF over, say, a place like New Orleans and things like other schools like that, right?
Yeah, I was down in South Florida, went to school at St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. A couple what they call showcases now. There was just like one all-star game. I was approached by assistant coach at UCF. I'd actually never heard of the school. It came down to, I got a couple limited offers from Florida, Florida State, Miami, just very partial scholarships, but it was FIU, UNO, UCF that all offered full scholarships. And at baseball, that's hard to do with a limited number of scholarships, obviously. So it narrowed it down to those three. My father and I drove up to UCF campus because at that time they didn't even have visits. UCF didn't. So we just took a ride up 3 hours north and fell in love with it. It was kind of just far enough away from home. It was a very peaceful campus at the time, a lot quieter. And it made, obviously looking back, it was one of my best decisions in life. At the time, I was a 10th round pick out of high school. And then end up, like I said, going in the first round. So I just grew so much at UCF, both as a person, both as a athlete, and just have nothing but pride every time everybody has UCF around the country. Like going, when we have fans, there's always a shout out in each city, how spread out the alumni and how much more it's happening nowadays. When 5 years ago, when I first was coaching the Blue Jays, no one really acknowledged it. Now every city, I kind of get a go Knights, charge on, things like that from the stands, and it's pretty cool.
Well, you were always a high average player, and then your power developed in your sophomore and junior seasons. And that junior season, obviously, was very special, being an All-American. Can you describe that season, what that was like going in there as your junior year and having the type of year that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I was a young college or young high school senior. I was 17, so I got to school at 17. I was not really mature, both physically, mentally. And my freshman year, I hit no home runs. I heard about it a lot. And then I kind of went to Cape Cod that was the following year. I'm getting them all mixed up. But I just basically physically grew. And I was so young that it just was a natural progression. I have a 15-year-old son right now who's about 6'1", 135, looks about like I did. So it just with age, I kind of put 10 to 15 pounds of weight / muscle each year from my freshman to junior year at UCF. So that with that, the power came, but I was so young at the time that there was nothing there but freshman year, but it slapped singles the other way.
Take me through that junior season, because that's really what got you noticed for the draft. And you had a monster season. You hit 345, 14 home runs. You had 7 triples. obviously to the point where you had to go or declare, right? Because you knew that you were a high draft prospect. Take me through that process, because at that time UCF baseball was still very young, especially in the Division One standpoint. I think they had just made the NCAA tournament for the first time in Division One in '89. You come aboard, you put that, had that monster career capped off by that great year, and you're probably all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, like the scouts are interested in me. What was that like?
It was a crazy whirlwind. When it all started, because I wasn't even on the map. There, obviously they've done all these crazy things in the last 30 years that weren't around back then with the perfect game and all the rankings and everything. But I really wasn't on the map even I was obviously had a chance to get drafted, but definitely not in the first round. And then we played the Royals in a spring training game, and we used wood bats. And I remember George Brett was there, McFarland, and they all played about 3 innings. But we faced their 40-man pitching, and I got 3 hits, stole a base, and threw a guy out, all in this game. And that's kind of when all these guys started coming up to me after games, didn't realize, hey, you have a chance to go high. And then by the midseason, it was, okay, you're going in the first round. And I, believe it or not, didn't even have an agent, which is unheard of now. But I went through the whole draft process without an agent. My dad went through everything. We negotiated literally all on our own. So like I said, we were pretty naive at the time that everybody had your best interest at hand. And looking back, I probably could have used an agent, but it all happened so fast and kind of out of nowhere going into that year that at no point did we think the UCF guy was going to go 5th overall in the country. And it all came, like I said, it came together perfect.
So does that then, because you knew that going into that season, then did you feel any pressure, any nerves, or was it just like, you just kind of felt like, well, that's not going to possibly happen? You just
that's the way I viewed it. I remember at the beginning of the year, there's probably 5 scouts in the stands. By the end of the year, there's 40 scouts in the stands. My buddy Ty Lynch, that we're still in touch with, always says I got him drafted because he ended up playing 1 season that year as well, because he got to be seen by the scouts. But I was so innocent and naive that I never felt any pressure because I didn't think it was a reality. I just played the game hard, and next thing you know, like I said, there's like 50 scouts in the stand, but it was just like, well, I'm worried about the guy on the mound, or I'm worried about, the things I can control. At no point was there all this publication that's out there now and all these Twitter world and all these things that everything's broadcasted. So the pressures are completely different now than back then.
Describe playing for Coach Bergman, and what was it like? And what was it like back then? Because there was no on-campus baseball stadium. What was it like?
Well, we actually had the on-campus baseball stadium on the other side.
Oh, okay.
It was, I think where the pool is at now, but my 3 years we had it. And then would have been my senior year was the first year they went back to Tinker. It was a graveyard. The gaps were huge. It was a big triples park, but Bergie liked to have fun. He kept it loose. He was always, very supportive. But the main thing I took away is he lets you enjoy yourself. It wasn't like a huge fundamental guys, but when it came to play the game, he locked it in. But when we were practicing, we were allowed to have fun and enjoy ourselves.
What is your interaction, if any, with the program these past 15 or 20 years? Do you try to stay in touch, go back? Have you been following Greg Lovelady's teams?
Lovelady and I keep in touch. He's had a couple guys come through the Trop, so I'll see him when he has those guys come through the Trop that he had at Miami or other places. There's a couple pictures. So we went to lunch the other day. Unfortunately, my time is so limited when I'm at home, the couple months that I want to get back to the family and kind of be normal, if that makes sense. I feel like my kids get robbed of me all the time. So I don't give back nearly as much as I want to or plan to. I went out and talked to the team last year, told them a couple of our philosophies. It was really enjoyable. And then to see them take off the way they took off, what was it, swept Auburn at Auburn? Is that what it was? Or
That's right. Swept them at Auburn. Yep.
Yeah. It's really a shame that season got shortened. And now I guess they got a good problem because now everybody's back, plus some other guys, which I talked to Lovelady briefly about how to keep guys happy and ways of rotating the lineups, just the realities of the job as well that he's going to have to deal with, which is a good problem. I always say when you have too many guys, it is stressful making out the lineup, keeping everybody up to speed and things like that.
What is your thoughts on the facility since you've been back, and just the program overall under Coach Lovelady now, and just seeing everything, how it's grown from the days where you were there?
Yeah, from the shack that we had as a cage, along with the bubble that was a weight room that had like 2 benches in it that we shared with the football team. These guys are pretty spoiled, but I'll tell you what, they earned it. They're doing an amazing job. Every time I drive through campus alone, I get lost and can't believe it just went from the Wild Pizza as the only place to eat on campus to all these things that they have now. It's like I said, it's just with tremendous pride every time I come back and go through the campus and see both the baseball, football, basketball, all the sports, and it makes it easier to brag to all these people. I wear my UCF national championship just to give everybody the ribbing and let them kind of have some fun with it. It's really special, like I said, and the pride that I have and go throughout the country and talk to people about it all the time.
Well, that's awesome. And we wanted to thank you for joining us. My last question for you is, you mentioned it briefly at the start, but in your heart of hearts, do you think this season starts on time in Major League Baseball? Because I think it's one thing everybody's wondering about right now. The players, the owners, we don't know. What do you, in your private moments, do you think that, because we're about a month out from spring training, pitchers and catchers, but do you think we're going to start on time?
I think a lot has to come together, that's for sure. I mean, it's one of these things that I've learned finally with this whole COVID protocol and life, the stress that I had in spring training, both 1.0 and 2.0, that I can't do it to myself anymore. I can't try to guess. I can't try to figure this thing out. Obviously, this virus, it has its own different mind in different ways it's been going about it. So I'm just going to roll with it. I think, unfortunately, MLB is taking that same attitude. That's what it feels like. But there's the energy that it took to get that season in last year. I don't know if people are ready to deal with it again. And I think that's why we haven't heard the announcements yet. We're all under the assumption we're going to be on time, but I just know a lot has to come together in a month to make that happen.
Well, that other people can figure that out. Brian is a diehard baseball. He lives day and night, so he's itching. He's itching, Chad. That's why he had to ask that question.
I will say I'm a diehard Yankees fan. My middle name is Munson, so I'm very much a Yankees fan. But to see the way that series ended with Brasso and the home run off of Chapman, very poetic. As a writer, I really enjoyed that poetic cap to that really, because of what happened the month before with them. It was really kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many people in the game of baseball that reached out to me and Mikey Brasso, just the way that all came together. They have to make a movie about it. The way he handled it, the way the Yankees handled it wasn't the best. I think they acknowledged that. It was one of those things that, like in life, you don't get revenge like that. It doesn't work out that way. The storybook, just reality isn't supposed to play out that way. And I think enough Yankees fans acknowledged it. It's one of these things that I'll take with me the rest of my life. I guess in instructional ball, they played the video, the 10-pitch at bat over and over for a week. And you just it doesn't get old. The feeling that of literally wanting to cry about it now. It's the range of emotions of the Brasso crying homer to the Phillips, like what just happened. Like, I don't know if I'll ever experience that again in life.
Well, there's a lot of great memories that certainly baseball fans enjoyed, and UCF fans enjoyed as they were rooting you on from afar. And really, we're excited for you and the success you've had. Chad Mottola here on Black and Gold Banneret. Thank you so much for taking the time from the busy schedule. I know it's it's your time off. You're trying to get ready for the season, whatever that brings. But on behalf of UCF fans and alums, we really congrats on the success you've had to this point. We wish you well more success, and hopefully once things get back to normal and in a better place, we'll see you at the ballpark more consistently up close.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And it's really an honor to be a UCF alumni, and I brag about it all the time. So great catching up, guys.